Welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with me, Venus O'Hara. An orgasmic lifestyle is about reaching a climax in all areas of life, not just in the bedroom. Here, we dive deep with expert guests on topics like nutrition, spirituality, personal development, sexuality, and much more. Together, we'll explore lifestyle lessons to help you lead a life that's fulfilling, joyful, and unapologetically orgasmic. I'm your guide, Venus O'Hara. Welcome to episode 158 of the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast with Venus O'Hara. In this first quarter moon episode, we discuss healthy hair, hair loss, and hair transplants. We speak with Dr. Alan J. Bauman, and he's a leading expert in hair restoration and hair loss treatment. And he's the CEO of the internationally renowned Bauman Medical. I also review the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And the episode ends with a meditation for hair care. So if you want to look after your hair, definitely check it out. And first of all, I'm going to start by sharing with you my struggles with hair loss and now my experience with epic hair growth. When I was growing up, my hair was the pride and joy of my family. I used to get so many compliments about my hair. It was super long down to my waist. It was golden brown, almost with red tinges, and it was naturally wavy. And people used to always compliment me all the time. And that was even before I had this notion of beauty standards myself. And I just wanted to cut all my hair off. I wanted to have bobbed, straight hair. And it's interesting because we always want what we don't have. And the beauty industry makes so much money out of this. And when I grew up, as soon as I could, I cut my hair, I layered it, and I started to dye it, I started to straighten it, and do all the things to make it look very different from how it was naturally. I can't believe of all the pressure and trauma I've put my hair under just because I didn't accept myself naturally. I used to do blonde streaks, and that involved staying in the hairdresser for about 3 hours, with all these chemicals on your head, with weird smells and sounds of hair dryers and terrible music and bright lights. And then I would wash my hair every day, which is so terrible. And I think it is for my particular hair at least. And then blow dry it straight. And then also use straightening iron. So the quality of my hair was not great. And I started to lose this massive volume of wild curly hair that was complemented so much when I was growing up. And it's so interesting how I just didn't, I rejected my natural self. But then as I got older, I started to want to have long hair again. And I knew that I would have to start looking after my hair in a much better way. And that involved, dyeing, not dyeing my hair with these aggressive dyes anymore, and not straightening it, and not using straightening irons anymore. So I started to have a more natural approach towards my hair care, which has been wonderful. And I started to embrace my wild out of bed waves and curls again. And it started to get more and more curly as I got older. I'm not sure why that happens, but it's interesting nonetheless. But then 5 years ago, things really shifted for me. I had been in hospital with COVID and pneumonia, and I've shared that many times on here. And it was actually the same year that I started the podcast. But I started to, about 3 months after coming out of hospital, I started to lose my hair in quite big chunks. It was a very scary experience. And I got to the point where I was afraid to brush my hair, because every time I would brush my hair, there was so much shedding. And I started to wash my hair a bit less, because every time, the shower would be full of hair. And I really lost a lot of volume. And I was really afraid about this because, it was such a big part of my identity as I was growing up. And then suddenly I'm faced with this reality of is something called telogen effluvium, which is a temporary hair loss, but still it's scary nonetheless, even though it can often be, it just sorts itself out with time. But it's very common to have this, a few months after a traumatic event. And I started to do a lot of research about hair. And the great thing is, I think anyone who's going through this, I would recommend just seeking professional help, because that's what I did. I got a dermatologist appointment, and it was kind of weird. Maybe it was energetic or spiritual, or just something that's nothing to do with those beliefs. But as soon as I made that dermatologist appointment, the shedding stopped, fortunately. And then a couple of weeks later, I had the appointment, and they did something called a pull test, where they start pulling different strands of your hair to see how much hair you are losing, and also this kind of very deep check of your scalp health as well. So fortunately, the shedding has stopped by then, and then I started to actually have epic hair growth. And during that time of the fear and research, I started to learn a lot about hair care in general and hair loss. And this really helped me to adopt better hair care rituals. For example, now I never use a hairdryer. Not saying that you shouldn't use a hairdryer. If you want to use your hairdryer, then you really should, especially if it's cold outside or whatever. But for me now, I am doing natural air drying. And also I wash my hair every 2 or 3 days with a low poo shampoo with no sulfates, no silicones. And then I use a very kind of natural leave-in conditioner. And also I cut my hair about once every 5 months. And that's something that's another big fear about hair care. It's just to find a good hairdresser that, that understands what you want and not what they think you should have is so complicated. And it just really puzzles me how there are so many hairdressers around, but there are not many hairdressers that I would trust with my hair. And I noticed a lot that my hair was growing, and then I would go to a hairdresser and I'd say, listen, just the split ends, just cut the minimum. And I would come out with this hair that it just seems to be a lot shorter than when I went in. But then when you look at the floor, it doesn't look like they've cut a lot, because they keep cutting. And then I'm like, oh my God, that's just undone these months and months and months of all the hair growth that I have been, patiently waiting for. And that's something that really puzzles me about hairdressers, is this concept of, I'm not going to do what you ask for, I'm going to do what I think you should have. And also insulting the quality of your hair, going, well, it looks terrible, So it's just really puzzling for me. This whole concept of the hairdressing industry in general. And also, so anyway, I stopped going to the hairdresser about 4 years ago. I have a friend who is a former hairdresser, and I told her that I wanted to grow my hair. And even though I've mentioned this to hairdressers for many years, and she said to me, well, what we're going to do is we're going to blow dry it straight and then cut it dry. So we just cut the minimum. And I was like, okay, wow. So ever since then, my hair has been growing so much. So every time I get it cut, it's just to maintain the kind of health of the ends. And that's what I'm doing now. And I'm actually due for a haircut next week, and I can't wait. I'm just really keen to get those ends looking full and healthy again. And I really want to grow my hair. I'm almost near elbow length, but that's kind of my goal, waist length or elbow length. I just love the feel of really long hair and how good it feels when I've just washed it. And now it's getting to the point where it's feeling heavy when I go in the shower and it's all wet. I just love how it feels down my back. And my first objective was to have hair that covers my breasts when I'm naked, so I look like a mermaid. But I've kind of reached that objective now, and now we're going a bit further. So I'm hoping that my hair is gonna, keep on being strong and healthy and full, because I know what it's like to have that moment where, I was literally thinking, what am I going to do about this hair loss? Because I look at pictures of myself from June 2021, and the loss of volume is pretty apparent. But I'm so glad I got over that. And also, I just think hair is it's a big part of identity, but also of health as well. And I just want to have really nice hair. And also, I just think now this culture, I've talked about, how beauty standards really make money out of us not accepting our natural state. But it's just, it's crazy to me how some of the things that people are doing are actually terrible for their natural hair. For example, using things like, weaves or wigs. And obviously some people do need those for confidence, etc. But why ruin something that's naturally okay? Because when you start, removing these things, your hair is not going to have the same kind of volume. You're going to see it as very thin. And I think the same is true of nails as well. I think a lot of people who are, have these fake nails, they're actually doing it to the detriment of their natural nail, and then just not really liking what they see naturally. Whereas for me, I don't do any kind of like eyebrow stuff or eyelash things, or I have natural nails. I don't use nail varnish. And I think I just want to be an example of the natural look as much as possible. But if I did find that I needed some support with if things were not quite working in the way I would want, then I definitely would seek professional help. And I think it's so important to go to reputable specialists when it comes to anything that's cosmetic or similar, because there are so many people profiting off insecurities and who don't have the right regulations or the right kind of how would I say, rules in place or standards that we are used to in let's say the Western world. So it's really important to do your research if you are thinking about getting a hair transplant or anything similar, or any type of beauty procedure. We're going to find out more about this with today's guest, who is probably one of the top experts of hair in the world. And I was so excited to speak to him. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Do you feel disconnected from your body, or unsure how to ask for what you really want in bed? Or maybe you're stuck in a routine, or there's more pleasure available to you, but you don't know how to access it or where to begin. That's exactly why I created the Personal Pleasure Coaching app. It's a 12-week guided journey designed to help you reconnect with your body, release shame, and explore your pleasure in a deeper, more conscious way. Inside, you'll find daily micro lessons, guided practices, embodied exercises, and intimacy meditations that you won't find anywhere else. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or somewhere in between, this is about building confidence, connection, and real lived pleasure. If you're ready to prioritize yourself and your pleasure and explore what's truly possible for you, you can get started now at studio.com/Venus. That's studio.com/Venus. Your pleasure is worth it. Now it's time for this episode's interview. We speak with Dr. Alan J. Bauman, a leading expert in hair restoration and hair loss treatment, and the CEO of the internationally renowned Bauman Medical. Dr. Alan J. Bauman, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you here. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic, Venus. Great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
Absolutely. So I am a full-time board-certified hair restoration physician for nearly 30 years. I've been in practice in Boca Raton, Florida, at Bauman Medical, which I founded back in the 1990s. And I've had the pleasure and honor, really, of treating over 34,000 patients and changing their lives by helping them grow their own hair thicker, better, stronger, restoring their hair. And it's been a fun ride, and I have no plans of slowing down anytime soon. Our mission is to make hair loss a non-issue for people.
Amazing. So keep growing could be your business slogan. Going to keep growing.
We've grown every year. I started the
Yeah.
practice back in the 1990s with no employees, just my
Mm.
my wife. We moved down from New York, and I started the practice. She answered the phones and made the appointments. I did the consults and the surgeries. We brought in the teams, on a part-time basis, and I've grown to now over 35, 36 full-time team members and nearly 13,000 square foot facility. So it's been growing and growing, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop.
Amazing. So hair growing and business growing, that's fantastic. So,
Absolutely.
so what inspired you to follow this path?
Well, the inspiration, most people are not born into the world of hair restoration, and certainly not in the 1990s was anybody thinking that this was maybe a good idea. Certainly, my parents didn't think it was a great idea, but I was originally inspired by a plastic surgeon to go into the more cosmetic and artistic side of surgery, even before I could drive a car.
Mm.
So I had kind of ridden on his coattails and been mentored by this surgeon on the Upper East Side of Manhattan for a long, long time. And he kind of mentored me through my pre-med days, medical school, even through my internship and residency program in surgery in New York. And it really wasn't until I was deep into that residency program, heading towards plastic surgery, did I even, I didn't think anything about hair transplantation until I met a patient who had had a hair transplant. And in that visit, that meeting, he was having something else, and I was the good, studious resident taking notes about his medical history and so forth. And he had revealed that he had had a hair transplant. And I'm looking at him just as I'm looking at you, and it was I could not tell at all that he had had a hair transplant. And of course, that became the topic of conversation. I asked him, if he could tell me where he had his hair transplanted. And I was aiming like where on his scalp. And he basically told me, well, I had it done up in Toronto, Canada. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting too. I want to hear about that. And so what he had revealed to me is that there was this new technology that was coming of age in hair transplantation, single follicle implantation, so that the end results would look 100% normal and natural. And he was thrilled that I couldn't tell it was a hair transplant. So that's stuck in the back of my mind. But one of the things I remember most about that conversation is how he said that the hair had changed his life. And he revealed to me, both socially and professionally, that after the hair transplant was performed, um, his life was never the same. He had amazing opportunities in business and promotions and so forth, and met the love of his life and had some children, things like that. And he was just riding high. And he said that it had all turned around after he got his hair back. And so that was the moment that I decided maybe I should look into this. Weird subspecialty that's out there in hair
Mm.
restoration, and that started me on my path. And the rest is history. I mean, obviously, I did the regular pathway through looking at journal articles and textbooks and visiting physicians both nationally and internationally, and eventually going through a fellowship program in Long Island and New York, and then eventually opening up my own practice and becoming board certified and so forth. But it was really that first um, patient that I had met that crossed my path that really opened my eyes to the world of just how emotional and powerful hair could be.
Yeah, so it's definitely part of your confidence. And a few years ago, actually 5 years ago, I was in hospital with COVID and pneumonia.
Uh,
And it was a life-changing experience. It was a very spiritual, kind of transformational experience. And that was in February 2021. And then when I came out, I think it was about 3 months after, I started losing so much hair. And
mhm.
it was crazy because I was so afraid to brush it because all of these, I mean, my brush would be full of hair, like the same as in from a day's brushing from like what I'd usually have in a month. So I was very afraid. And sometimes there would be hairs dangling like off front when I was like paying for groceries, and I was very embarrassed, and just my hair's been like my pride and joy most of my life. And
You have beautiful hair.
oh, thank you. It's just kind of, I had to wash it for this interview. It's not quite dry yet, but it just, this whole situation really knocked my confidence because I was thinking, what am I going to do? Do I need to get a hair transplant? And I actually booked an appointment with a dermatologist, which is something the first thing I would recommend when someone has that like situation. But I just took a deep dive into telogen effluvium. You can tell us more about it. But I started also looking at the best way to care for hair, and I was also losing hair in the temples, and I had a severe vitamin D deficiency as well.
Mhm.
So I started to get, let's take the biotin and the vitamin D and the iron and all of these things. I started using rosemary oil in my scalp. I now I'm doing low poo, so very kind of natural shampoos, and I only wash my hair every 3 days. And I don't use any styling products, air dry. And now I've got epic hair growing. But it's just so good when I started seeing those baby hairs growing again. It was just the sigh of relief, like I'm not going to lose my hair. And I just really want to be an advocate of natural beauty and, and just natural. But it was just really shocking. It took us several months until things started to get better. But as soon as I kind of made that dermatologist appointment, that's when things started to shift for me because the shedding stopped at that point. And then, yeah. Do you have any?
Well, you're very lucky because a lot of folks did have a severe shed in and around the time, whether they had COVID or were just suffering from the lockdowns, the stress of COVID, that pandemic, or they were vaccinated, unfortunately. And so what we saw during the pandemic was an epidemic of hair loss and hair shedding. And
Mm,
typically, it could do exactly what you're saying. It created telogen effluvium. Sometimes it was short-lived, meaning just a few months or so, and then it would resolve on its own. And this was not a surprise to those of us who are board certified in hair restoration because we knew back from the Spanish flu days in the literature that post-febrile alopecia caused massive shedding in alopecias around that time in the early 1900s when it was running rampant. So this was not a surprise for those who were hospitalized or severely implicated, affected by COVID and the infection and so forth. We knew that it was just a ticking time bomb that 6 to 12 weeks out, they were going to have some severe shedding from those from the fever and flu and so forth. But here's the thing. COVID also revealed underlying hair loss problems genetically. Now, you said that you had maybe lost a little bit of hair in the temples. That's
mm,
actually indicative of hereditary hair loss or androgenetic alopecia. And
mm,
I'm hoping that that has regrown for you. I can't tell from
yeah.
your hair styling, but
Mm,
in many cases, folks would come to visit us again after COVID or some other, a problematic situation. And what we find is that their hair loss or hereditary hair loss is exacerbated or accelerated by that situation. So, in those cases, especially in men, where the male pattern hair loss is receding the hairline, and a little bit less so in women because they typically do retain a little bit of hair there. Sometimes we would actually need to do hair transplants to fix that area. That actually created some permanent damage. It accelerated their natural progression of hereditary hair loss. So not everybody was as lucky as you to have a rebound effect. Very often we would use therapies and treatments such as platelet-rich plasma or medical therapies. We would even use things like TED, transepidermal delivery of growth factors and peptides, which was great for the shedding that occurred during COVID. And we had great success with those therapies and treatments. But the most important thing, and I think you mentioned it, is seek medical attention. Now, I wouldn't say that necessarily every dermatologist is an expert in hair, although they like to maybe think they are. I would direct your attention to board certified hair restoration physicians who have the ways to measure your hair. Because even if you got to that dermatologist, they typically don't have a video microscope that does hair counts or hair density analysis. They don't have those tools to really track what's going on over time. They're just going to take an inventory of, hey, how's your shedding going? And hey, it looks pretty good today, blah, blah, blah. And unfortunately, they also don't have access to the therapies and treatments that you might need if the situation is, again, more severe than just a temporary shed.
yeah. In that case, I did this thing called a pull test. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
by that point, it was kind of okay. It wasn't like big clumps.
Yeah.
I just do think also energetically, is this that since you start making, start deciding that you're going to find solutions. I just think it's really important to seek professional care. There's lots of stuff on you read online as well, but you just don't know what's true. But I mean, I did find that the rosemary essential oil was a nice thing to do for myself, just to kind of put that on my scalp with jojoba
Well,
oil and
I'll tell you, I'm a huge fan of rosemary oil,
mm,
especially on my lamb chops.
uh-huh,
I'm not so convinced it works well on hair for hair growth, but
uh-huh,
there is one small study, and that's one of the reasons why I included it. It also smells nice. I included it in my hair care
mm,
product, along with a bunch of other actually active ingredients that are helpful. But people are looking for natural substances that grow hair. They're looking for non-pharmaceutical treatments, whether it be peptides or using their own body to rejuvenate the hair, like I mentioned previously, PRP, platelet-rich plasma, and things such as that. Even red light therapy can be a helpful
mm,
treatment for those early stages of hair loss. But please, if you're suffering with hair loss out there, one of the things I would encourage your followers and listeners to do is get a true evaluation and benchmark exactly what's going on because you don't want to go down the path of using rosemary oil on your hereditary hair loss situation.
yeah,
That's not going to end well. And I think the take home message there is that time equals follicles. That every
mm,
moment that you're not treating the hair situation effectively, you're losing hair follicle quality and quantity. So you can't get that time back. You have to make accurate decisions early if you want to avoid more invasive treatments later on.
Yeah, for me, like, I really kind of lost the volume, and that was kind of scary because I've always had quite good hair. So what about kind of normal day-to-day hair care rituals? What do you think is good for the hair, and what do you think is damaging? Because I mean, now, I mean, years ago, I used to do streaks. We just kind of like bleached my hair.
Oh,
I used to straighten it every day. I used to wash it every day. It's like I didn't accept my natural waves, and then when I decided to kind of grow it, I stopped doing that. I just do air drying now, etc. So what do you think is quite
sure.
normal what people do, but it's not good?
Well, the first thing is that most people, if they have curly hair, they want it straight, and if they have straight, they want it
Yeah.
curly. And the only way to get from one place to the other on that regard is with a chemical.
Mm,
So, chemical processing, whether it's a perm or a straightener, can certainly damage the hair fiber. Now, as long as you're not creating any kind of inflammation or damage or burn at the level of the scalp with those chemicals, what's happening is that you're breaking that dead keratin tissue. So a hair fiber is different than the hair follicle. The follicle is under the skin. That's the cellular organ, the mini organ that creates the hair. Think of it like a 3D printer. What you see and what you feel, what's curly and colorful and beautiful and voluminous, that's dead tissue, like your fingernails. And just like a fingernail, once it's cracked or broken, it doesn't self-repair. And your
mm,
hair is the same. So if you have been mistreating your hair, let's say with chemicals or high heat or hot tools or something, or you've been exposed to the elements, and your hair is exceptionally long, like yours is, you might notice at the ends, it doesn't look as healthy. It has a more dull texture. It might be split at the ends. It may look a little and feel a little bit more rough. And so that is the result of the damage to the fiber itself. The cuticle is the coating of the hair fiber. And once the cuticle is broken, which needs to happen when you do color or perms, either way, when that happens, that cuticle does not self-repair, and then that hair fiber becomes more permeable and more prone to breakage. So you definitely want to try to protect the hair from the get-go. I'm not saying
mm,
you have to deal with the color or the curl or the straightness that you have. Certainly, people deal with frizzy hair and they want to manage it, but you've got to make some smart choices because if you overdo that processing, you can really make some hair damage occur, and that's not so good. Um, a lot of folks ask, how much shampooing should I do and conditioning? And that answer is going to be different for every single person that comes through the door to a clinic like mine. And the way that we know that is because there's a huge variation, even in terms of your age. What might be appropriate in your teens and 20s may be totally different than when you're 40 or 50 years old. And that has to do with the amount of sebum or oil that your scalp
mm,
produces, right? It may have to do with your lifestyle factors like, are you physically active? Are you swimming? Are you sweating? Are you working out? Are you doing hot yoga? Are you playing golf? Are you swimming in the ocean? You're going to need to do a lot more shampooing and conditioning in those particular situations just to keep your scalp clean. Are you using a lot of product on your scalp or on your hair? You're going to need to shampoo and condition that stuff out of there. So there's no one specific answer. Um, I like the fact that you've kind of developed, like, again, every third day process for yourself. But again, I would just caution you, you may want to have somebody take a look at your scalp and make sure that there's no buildup of skin cells or sebum, because that
mm,
can be a recipe for disaster. This organisms, the microorganisms that live on your scalp called the skin microbiome, can get dysregulated very quickly, and you can get a fungal overgrowth in the scalp, like literally overnight. So think of like athlete's foot or fungal infections in other places in your body that are warm and moist that can happen on your scalp too, and that's not so good. And when that happens, inflammation occurs, and that can also impair hair growth. So we got to keep our scalp healthy. And that the answer, how often to shampoo and what to do with what kind of shampoo and how to condition, that's going to be a unique answer for every single person. So, but and sometimes it's trial and error. You're standing in the market looking at all the shampoos and conditioners. You can almost like close your eyes and spin around and pick a bottle. But
mm,
you really want to try to get some, again, professional advice. And of course, trichologists are great at this, right? Because they are
mm,
studying the scalp. They're looking for any kind of buildup or sebum and flakes and such that are happening on your scalp, and they're going to instruct you on how to keep that clean.
Yeah, I use one of those things, like a silicone thing for like to make it lather up. I
Oh,
can't, I don't
nice.
even I don't know the name of it, but it just
Oh
feels
yeah.
good.
those those are great. They feel
Mm,
great in the shower for sure.
yeah.
And a little bit of massage actually has been shown to improve circulation to the scalp. And so again, that can be a part of a healthy ritual, as you say. But don't forget, include in that ritual some professional visits.
Yeah, definitely. Because in my, I have a private healthcare, which is not everyone has that in Europe, but they did it like this, test of with a, I can't remember what they looked at my scalp and everything. So my scalp has improved a lot since I became a bit more mindful of what was happening.
Great.
That's a good thing. Sometimes you need something like this in your life to kind of like become more aware of how you're looking after
No,
yourself.
it
Yeah.
brings your attention to it, Venus,
Mm,
obviously. And that's really, really important. And I
mm,
think for a lot of folks that maybe weren't thinking that they were going to have a hair loss problem and they went through the lockdowns, the shutdowns, they weren't able to get to the gym or get to the beach here in some places in the United States, certainly. I mean, that caused they weren't available to visit their friends or family. I mean, that kind of depressive situation could and stress for sure can exacerbate the health of the scalp and how well your follicles are producing that beautiful hair fiber. So, yeah,
mm,
we learned a lot during that situation, and many of people's hair loss problems were unfortunately revealed, but yet at a point where they could actually treat it. So
mm.
that's the silver lining of a situation like the pandemic, so to speak.
So what
But we're
about?
seeing it all again, with the weight loss medications. So,
Oh wow,
most
yeah.
people are not aware that medications that cause you to lose weight are telling the body that it's in starvation mode. That's why you're burning the fat around your belly or wherever your
Mm,
body is in let's use the firewood that's in the basement type of mode is
mm,
and that's the whole point of being on a weight loss medication. But when you're in that caloric restrictive situation, that can also trigger some hair loss as well. And so folks that didn't even realize that they were prone to hair loss, once they start to lose 10, 15, 20 pounds or more, then certainly they're going to see some changes in their hair.
mm. What about diet and supplements?
Well, I'll tell you, nutrition is critical for hair, and I'll impart to you that hair follicles are probably the second most highly metabolic cell population in your body. That means they're rapidly dividing. The first one is probably your bone marrow, which is your immune system, and your red blood cells, your circulatory system. Right up there is probably your gut lining, which replaces itself every day. But when it comes to the hair follicles, they're very, very highly metabolic. And so, what does that mean? That means that they're going to be very responsive to different things that could dysregulate them, but also they need nutrients and fuel. So, if you're on a very restrictive diet, as we mentioned, with a weight loss medication or a weight loss program, or let's say you're gone vegan and you don't absorb plant protein all that well, you're not going to have the fuel that it takes to make the hair fiber. Those follicles are basically going to be starving themselves, and then they're not going to create a that beautiful hair fiber, or they're going to create one that's weaker and wispier, more prone to breakage, more dull. So, protein intake is critical, obviously. You mentioned yourself vitamin D deficiency. That's probably one of the most common deficiencies in the world today. Most of us live
Mm,
in the industrialized society. We're working inside. I'm certainly guilty of that. I know how much vitamin D I need to take on a daily basis in order to keep my vitamin D levels up, not just for immunity purposes, but also for hair growth as well. So, really, really important to monitor vitamin D. And you got to be on that upper end for optimal hair growth and immunity as well. So, but
mm,
look, B vitamins, B complex. A lot of people know B7, which is biotin.
mm,
Really, really important. And if you think that you might be deficient in something or you're not sure, then you got to get that test. So there's blood tests to look for nutrient deficiencies. You might need a genetic test to see if you're prone to certain prone to certain nutritional deficiencies that you should be on the lookout for. Um, a lot of people don't even realize today, for example, that drinking a lot of green tea could make them anemic, ferritin depleted.
oh wow.
And we just had, one of our patients didn't realize she loved green tea. She was using a lot of matcha latte and all that other
Mm,
stuff. And especially if you take that around the time of food, you might end up not absorbing enough iron, and that could be a problem. So there's plenty of deficiencies out there that could, and of course, iron, as you know, is the basis of the carrying of the oxygen through the bloodstream and the red blood cells, of course. So you need to be have a good ferritin level. You need to have that over 60 if you're checking your numbers, not just in the normal range, but the high end of normal in order to be optimal for hair growth. And especially if you're prone to female or male pattern hair loss, if you have that in the family.
Yeah, I'm actually vegan, so I had this kind of extra mission to
Ah,
prove I can have good hair.
well, you're very
Yeah.
lucky that you can metabolize plant protein the way that you do, because obviously you've got a very thick, beautiful head of hair. But
Yeah, because
you know,
I've heard all the rumors about people saying I got the thin hair with vegan. So I was and also when I was in hospital, the doctors were like, "Oh, you're gonna have to get blood work every 3 months," and I was thinking, "No, no, I'm gonna be really a really good vegan." So I did as much research as I could and all the blood work and everything, and to get optimal levels of
sure.
everything I needed. So yeah,
Well, that's
yeah,
great that you keep on top of it. We see many
mm,
patients who have, let's say turned vegan and then all of a sudden notice that
mm,
they're, they can't build muscle or have more difficulty building muscle. It may
mm,
have trouble sleeping. They have, trouble growing good hair. They used to grow good hair. So, it's not the same for everybody. This is why
mm,
we're all genetically unique. Some of us are probably, genetically, positive that we can survive very, very easily on a vegan diet, and others maybe not. And that's probably natural selection, honestly.
mm,
It's like why we need some people who are maybe prone to pack on a little bit more weight than others because they got to
mm.
survive the famines, that afflict the humankind over the millennia. But and that's why there's that genetic variation. If we were all the same, then the human species probably would not survive a small little a twist in our in our environment, I guess.
So what is a hair transplant? What's the procedure?
Ooh, a hair transplant. Yes. Well, I love to talk about hair transplants because that's my favorite thing to do.
Mm.
Hair transplant surgery has changed a lot over the years, but the main concept is that we take the most permanent and viable hair follicles from the sides and the back of the scalp. That's usually the area that's not afflicted by male or female pattern hair loss.
So you
And
have
those
to have some
follicles.
hair. You have to have some hair to do it.
Oh, yes. If you have an
Uh,
autoimmune condition, for example, and you have no hair on your head, you're not a candidate for hair transplant surgery. Hair
okay.
transplant's all about supply and demand. Autoimmune conditions can knock out the hair really, head to toe. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just a little small spot on the scalp or the beard in men, and other times it's all of the hair on your head, including eyebrows and lashes. Um, but most of what we see in the practice at Bauman Medical is male and female pattern hair loss. So if you think about male pattern loss for an easy example, the hairline recedes, the crown starts to thin, and it meets
Mm,
somewhere in the middle. And the hair around the sides and the back is protected. It's immune to the hereditary male pattern hair loss process. It's immune to the effects of the male hormones over time. So that male hormone actually is DHT, by the way. So dihydrotestosterone is the trigger for male pattern hair loss, and that's obviously that leads us to some of the treatments. But if we're going to need a hair transplant, the follicles are dead and gone in that area. We're hopefully doing something to protect the other hairs. We need to move the follicles from around the sides and the back into the balding zone. Now, back in the early days, we used to do that with a strip harvest. So that would mean taking out a swath of the back of the scalp, suturing that defect together, and taking
mm,
that block of tissue and then dissecting it into grafts that contain the follicles. But today, good news, we don't have to do that. The minimally invasive follicular unit extraction approach enables us to take the individual grafts, which contain as little as a single hair follicle each, and move those around individually. And that leaves you with no linear scar behind. You could be back in the gym in just a few days. And for men who want to wear a short haircut, there's no visible sign that they've had anything done. And the most important thing, however, is to choose a surgeon that has an artistic eye. And this is, something that is often overlooked
mm,
in, I would say, the clinics, and it's all around the world. It's not just in the popular destination locations that you might hear about on TikTok, but all over the world, there are clinics that kind of forget about the artistry, and what you end up with is a straight line across your head. And that doesn't necessarily look natural in any way, shape, or form. So creating a hairline is an artistic judgment that is, worked on in a communications way with the surgeon and his patient. And we want to design something that looks normal and natural, that fits the frame of your face, that fits your anatomy. And then the actual execution of the hairline is the angle, orientation, the position, the variation in density as you go across the hairline. So it looks soft and natural and it doesn't look contrived, but it
mm.
looks youthful and amazing and it covers the scalp. And that's the idea. So
Is it
hair
just one
transplant,
session? Is it just one
well,
session? Is it
oh, it
just one
depends.
session?
Yeah, it
Mm,
depends. If you're doing an eyelash or an eyebrow transplant, it could be just a 1 day deal. If you're doing a small area like the crown or the hairline, absolutely. Some more heroic efforts require multiple days in
mm,
consecutive order, meaning like 2 or 3 days to get to the numbers of grafts that we need. Sometimes hair transplant goals require multiple visits, meaning that, like my dad, for example, who was totally bald before we had the opportunity to transplant him, he needed 4 sessions of transplants, although that's more rare today.
wow. So is it painful?
Oh, it doesn't hurt me at all. I do it all day long. Oh, you mean
For
for
the
the
patient?
patient? No, of course not. So, I mean, that was one of the things back in the 1990s that was on the tips of everyone's tongue, like, oh my God, a hair transplant, that's the most painful procedure. It's like an adult circumcision. No.
Mm,
So I set out back in 1997 to make sure that our patients had a comfortable experience through the hair transplant procedure. And not only was it a plan for my business, meaning that I didn't want to hurt the patients, I wanted them to come back and like us. Um, but also, I knew from my background in surgery that using the correct tools, using the correct anesthesia, the correct medications, and the correct application thereof, we could create something that was completely pain free. And so that's what I've developed in the practice.
mm,
We put local anesthetic into the scalp in a very nuanced way. So it enables us to get the scalp numb so that it's completely numb for hours and hours on end. And even after the procedure is all completed, once the medication starts to wear off, most patients take a Tylenol or Motrin or nothing at all.
mm,
It's a very, very comfortable process. We're not dealing with all the stitches, the staples, and the
mm,
narcotic pain medications from years and years ago. So it's pretty exciting to be able to provide that in a virtually painless way
mm.
for
Here
our
in Europe,
patients.
there's a big trend of people going to Turkey, and apparently,
Mhm.
if you look at a plane, like all the men going to Turkey, they've all got bald heads, and you can there's videos on TikTok of it. So it's very well known that people are getting these cheap procedures there. What should people be aware of in this type of situation,
Yes.
going for
So
cheap
medical tourism
medical?
in all areas of medicine is not
Mm,
anything new. I mean, here in the United States, people travel to Costa Rica, to Mexico, to
mm,
Colombia, to save money on their liposuction procedures and other cosmetic procedures. Unfortunately, in many of these distant locations, and Turkey included, it's unregulated. And
mm,
when things are unregulated, what's going to happen is that you're not going to have good sterilization of instruments. You're not going to have good supervision. Who knows who is exactly doing your procedure or not? I mean, there are great surgeons in all corners of the world, and even Istanbul for sure. They're excellent surgeons. But I can tell you that maybe the 2 or 3 excellent surgeons in Istanbul, they're not doing 2,000 procedures a day, which is what's going through the airport on
wow.
any given day. So but in all seriousness, a botched hair transplant, just like dental restoration, a botched dental restoration can be deadly. And this is unfortunate that there have been many deaths in all parts of the world, in unsupervised, unregulated countries. And yes, a good hair transplant is not cheap, and a cheap hair transplant is typically not good. So I would just caution people, and I know that people save up a long time to get their hair transplants completed. And, we know how powerful hair is in terms of its emotional organ. But please, if you're out there within the sound of my voice, please do your homework. Please look at the risks. It's not worth your life. There were 6 mortalities from turkey teeth last year. And
Wow.
several in the hair transplant world. The liposuction women have come back from these distant locations while they were under anesthesia, they had their kidneys removed and sold on the black market. So it's not a
Wow.
joke out there. And even though
Mm,
it looks all trendy and fun, like rosemary oil does, there's a lot of risk to it if you're flying over there to an unregulated clinic. So I would just be careful. Use your resources.
mm,
Use the American Board of Hair Restoration Surgery list. Use the list, especially if you're in the UK. Use the list from Spencer Stevenson that's on, for example, the Ape to Gentleman website of best hair transplant surgeons in the world today. And even if you don't choose someone who's on that list, like myself, for example, there are good guidelines there that you can look at to see what are the things that you should be looking out for. What are the questions to ask? If you're having a consultation on WhatsApp, okay,
yeah.
that's probably the first indication that this is not the clinic for you.
Mm,
A one-on-one evaluation should be done in person, or at least one-on-one on Zoom with photos and a medical doctor, and getting a detailed diagnosis before things move forward in any way, shape, or form with a surgical procedure that could threaten your life. So, I'm not here to scare people, but what I would like to do is educate them. And so, the IAHRS, the Bald Truth, in here in the United States, also has a great listing of physicians that are recommended. And that's a third party. The American Hair Loss Association is a 501(c)(3), and Spencer Coburn, another Spencer, is in charge of that organization, and he has his list of folks. So use these resources. Go to the AI and find out whether you're asking ChatGPT, Grok, whatever, Gemini, or you put in some good prompts and try to figure out what kind of questions you should be asking your doctor. Find out what kind of procedure you should be having, and hold your clinic to account. Again, it's very difficult to undo a poorly planned and poorly executed hair transplant. It's nearly impossible. And the cure for a poorly executed hair transplant could be 10 times the cost of that original transplant. So just be careful out there, um, and get the preventative therapies going first, please. This is the other thing. People fly, go get some procedure done in some distant place. They fly back. They forget that the rest of their hair is at risk.
Mm. Yeah, well,
Not good.
I was actually targeted. Well, someone from Turkey actually invited me to do some turkey teeth thing just for
Mm.
content as an influencer, and they
Oh
were going
boy.
to invite me to this beautiful resort, and it just looked amazing. But I just thought I would. I mean, I like my natural teeth, fortunately, but I just thought I couldn't imagine, recovering from some surgery in a resort and then taking a plane back. Because flying is already kind of uncomfortable anyway, but doing it post surgery, you know.
Oh my God. It's
Mm.
that's crazy. Like I said, about half a dozen people lost their lives last year doing turkey teeth. So it's
Wow.
it's terrible for the families, and
Mm.
it's hard to think about. So it's a good thing you didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's that could be really bad news. So,
Mm.
just to save a dollar, put your life at risk like that.
Mm. What about graying hair? Is there anything like to prevent graying hair, or
Well,
that's
gray
probably one
hair is
question that everyone
another,
wants to know.
yeah, gray hair is another interesting factor. When you have gray hair, what's not working is the melanocyte stem cell population. And certainly there are um, things like if you overdose on zinc, that could deplete your copper and make your hair go gray a little bit more quickly. Certainly there's genetic components to it. We don't have a miracle cure yet for gray hair, but what we do know is that there are some peptides like copper peptide, for example, that can certainly help out and help preserve the color. We've had some good repigmentation with the treatment called TED, transepidermal delivery, and that includes the copper tripeptide, zinc thymolene, and some other peptides that are in that product and that treatment modality. So it's been pretty interesting. Now, once the stem cell population of the melanocytes are gone, you're out of luck. That's they're not coming back. But if they're kind of sputtering, they're working a little bit, then you can certainly try to boost them up. And
I
that's
think
it's a
there's
common
shampoo
question.
online where they say you're going to like have this shampoo and it prevents grey or brings you back to natural colors. That's a bit of a scam.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't think we have that cure for it yet. I mean, that would certainly
Mm.
disrupt a billion-dollar industry of hair color. So we'd probably hear about that. But I think that there's going to be a lot of science coming through within the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Mm. What about hormones and like with female hair loss with menopause? I think I've seen a lot of women who age and then their hair loses lots of density. You can really see the scalp.
Yes, well, that happens with hereditary hair loss for sure in women. What we do notice is that certain times in women's lives, as the hormone levels change, whether it be due to a hormone abnormality like PCOS during childbearing years or during after childbirth when hormone levels crash, you can see some shedding and loss. Of course, depending on hereditary causes, you could see that receding hairline or thinning through that frontal zone as the hormones shift for sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those are very common things that we treat here at Bauman Medical. So we can use non-chemical therapies like red light therapy. We use the Bauman Turbo laser cap, make sure their nutrition is on point. If they do have hormone abnormalities, we obviously want to address that. And we have a lot of partner clinics that can help us with hormone optimization. We want to be careful though. We don't want to add, for example, testosterone into a female postmenopausal woman who is experiencing, androgenetic or female pattern hair loss. That could make the situation worse. So we want to definitely be careful about that for sure.
Mm. So you mentioned at the beginning that you had there was someone who really whose transformation really inspired you to follow this path. Is
Yeah.
there any particular story that you have been part of, someone else's transformation that's really had a huge impact on you? I'm sure you've got many, but is
Well,
anyone
there's
that
yeah,
gets you
there's so many.
excited?
Obviously, I mentioned my dad. I mean, it was exciting to be able to do his hair transplant from
Mm.
bear to hair. That was very fun. Some of the more rewarding cases that we've done are patients who have been injured by trauma.
Mm.
For example, there was a military veteran who had was involved in a helicopter crash in the war zone, and he came back with a severe burn on his scalp. We did some restoration for him, and that I think was life changing for him to be able to get back to normal with a full head of hair.
Mm.
Um, People who have been injured in car crashes where they have eyebrow loss or scar tissue there, we've done eyelash and eyebrow transplants for those folks as well. So
Mm.
I remember, pardon me, I remember there was a young man who was in middle school who had had a plastic surgery procedure many years many years ago or many years before. He had a birth defect on the back of his scalp, and a plastic surgeon took it out and left him with a big scar. We transplanted that area. We did that
Mm.
through our pro bono foundation, the Bauman Philanthropic Foundation. We did it minimally invasively, and we were able to fill that area in. And he was, being teased and bullied at school with that little bald spot. And then, then he was walking on cloud nine after the restoration. So pretty
Definitely.
exciting.
It's great to see that. A couple of questions I ask all of my guests.
Sure.
What is the book that changed your life? It could be nothing to do with hair, just in general. What's the book that changed your life? I'm a big reader, so I'm always looking
Oh,
for
really?
life
Wow.
changing recommendations.
Well, I've read a lot of books. I mean, most recently, I would say probably Superhuman by Dave Asprey. I'm
Mm.
a bit of a biohacker, and he's been an inspiration to me. When I met him probably almost 10 years ago at the American Academy of Anti-Aging, he was talking about putting butter in coffee, and that was a little controversial at the time, obviously.
Mm.
But his advice in many different ways, supplementation wise, lifestyle changes and mindset, things like that, have helped me a lot in my health journey for sure. So I would say Superhuman by Dave Asprey certainly was a big one in my life. But there's just so many that have made a big impact on me. I mean, uh, The Magic of Thinking Big is one of the books that I
I
read
love that one.
when I was in high school. My dad was he's a dentist, but he also had some side businesses as well, and that was one of the books that I think kind of opened my mind as to the power of attitude. And having a positive mental attitude is really, really important, not just in business, but also for life in general and longevity. Actually, I think that's one
Mm.
of the keys. If you look at folks that have a not necessarily incredibly long lifespan, but have an incredibly long health span. That's really
Mm.
important. And I think they'll always kind of point to positive mental attitude for that.
Did your business growth, was it part of like a mindset of magic of thinking big, or was it something that just happened without you even thinking about it?
Well, in the early days after my fellowship, I knew for sure that I did not want to be part of the practice where I was trained. It was instilled in me to be autonomous, be my own boss. My dad was always his own boss, so to speak, and he said, "Look, you can decide when you want to work, when you want to take off, vacations and whatnot." So, it was always my intention to build a destination location. And obviously the center that I have right now, 13,000 square foot center, is a beautiful representation of that. I don't think I'm going to build it any bigger physically in this location, but
Mm.
hey, you never know. It's certainly always an idea of putting the pieces together and to grow it slowly and, just make sure that we're taking care of our patients the way that we would want to be taken care of. And I think that's what I've instilled in my team, and that's why many of my team members have been with me for 2 decades or more in some cases.
Amazing, amazing. What about a quote or affirmation that you live by?
A quote or affirmation? Um, yeah, just let's go. Just let's do it.
Let's
Yeah.
grow.
Well, let's grow is a good one too. Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful. So where can people find you?
Oh, well, people can find me on all the social media channels that you can imagine. But most importantly, if there's someone out there who's within the sound of my voice that thinks that they might be prone to losing hair, or they've experienced a shedding as you've described and we've talked about, or they're seeing their hairline change, maybe their ponytail volume is just not the way that it used to be. And they want to make something happen, you've got to start at baumanmedical.com. That's Bauman medical, medical.com. At baumanmedical.com, they're going to find thousands of pages of information on the hair loss situation, on everything from hair loss anatomy and physiology to what kind of treatments we use to help those who are suffering from hair loss. So it's really, really important to get started there. There's actually hundreds of hours, if not 1,000 hours of video content on everything that we do. So it's a great place to ingest that information. But the first step is to get that evaluation. So you just click book evaluation right there, and my team will reach out and help you set up a time to connect with me. And even though we're based in Boca Raton and I have a satellite office in New York, I consult with patients all around the world when it comes to their hair loss situation. If we need to refer, we can do that. If we need to treat you here in Florida or New York, we can do that. But it all starts with that first conversation to get into exactly what is going on so we can get the correct diagnosis and initiate a really accurate treatment plan moving forward.
I love that. Well, Dr. Alan J. Bauman, it's been a real pleasure, and my hair's dry now. What kind of?
Yeah, again, you have beautiful hair, gorgeous,
Thank you.
and so take good care of it, and it'll last you a lifetime.
I hope so. If not, I'll be coming to Florida. The book I'm reading now is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I'm actually rereading this book, and I discovered this book thanks to a previous guest, Dr. Gabrielle Rosa, who said this was the book that changed her life. And the reason I was so attracted to this book was when I found out that it was about self-image, I was like, yay, because I've been struggling with self-concept a bit on and off in my life. And I was just so hungry for knowledge and I wanted to improve. So I got the book and I absolutely loved it. I've got to be honest though, I don't remember that much about it, just that it was a good book. But in terms of the takeaways, I've pretty much forgotten a lot about it. The story behind it is super interesting though. The doctor who wrote it, he was a plastic surgeon in the 50s. And he noticed that when he was treating patients, that after the surgery, then the patients would have a real shift in their self-image and their personality and their confidence. For example, imagine you're someone who has a massive nose and then you suddenly get a nose job and then all of a sudden you're walking taller and looking people in the eye and not hiding your face away. And that could be the same with someone who has dental work, who's afraid to smile. And he noticed that with lots of people, but it wasn't the case with everyone. And the ones who it was, then he tried to take a deep dive into what was really changing, because it's not always about the physical change. There was a shift internally. And the good news is to change your self-image, how you see yourself, your beliefs about yourself. You don't need to do any type of plastic surgery because that is a kind of, it can be opening a can of worms and just can be never ending. Once you find one thing you want to correct, there'll be something else, and it can, it can be quite toxic in the end. But it's not the case for everyone. Sometimes a little bit of a tweak can help with can be a real boost in self-confidence. So I've decided to start another book club here in Barcelona with this book. And I'm doing the same thing as I was doing with a friend last year with Think and Grow Rich. And we read one chapter at a time, and then we go to 5-star luxury establishments to actually take a deep dive into the chapter in question. And it's great to actually compare and contrast the things that jumped out at us in the chapters and see what we've underlined, etc. It's a really good exercise to do. And also the reason why I'm doing it in 5-star environments is because it's about growth, empowerment, abundance, and also subconscious reprogramming. It's a really good exercise to be in those environments and start to feel very comfortable, as if you're expecting the good service, you're expecting comfort, just a good service all around, because you don't get good service is not something that's really common here in Spain. A lot of so going to these types of places is very different. It's a really nice experience. And also ordering things and not really worrying about the price, but having this sense of calm and enjoying something that's starting to feel more and more normal. So that's a kind of another way to actually get these messages into the subconscious. So psychocybernetics has been, this time around, reading it slowly is definitely, it definitely has some more takeaways for me this time. Because I think in the past, as you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I'm really a big reader. I'm very curious about learning. But I think it got to the point where I was becoming a bit obsessed, like reading one book and then thinking about the next one. And it was like I assumed that the next book would have the answers, the missing piece that I needed to feel empowered. Whereas now I'm kind of slowing down and realizing that on every page there are so many nuggets of wisdom. And sometimes if you read too quickly, you can miss out on those things. But also rereading a book can be very beneficial as well, because we can never retain the whole information of any given book. But a couple of things that jumped out at me from the first chapter is something about something here that's kind of interesting. It says the way other people have reacted to us, especially in childhood. And this is very interesting when it comes to our self-concept being, in part due to or constructed from how others react to us. And I think that's kind of very true. I know lots of people think, the external validation's a very bad thing. And this is not exactly the same as external validation, but, seeing how others react to us definitely is indicative of what we are giving out. And sometimes we're not aware of what we're giving out in the world. And I think this is really interesting. I mean, for me, I can see, for example, when I go to, let's say, the shops that I go to frequently, I love to see the server's reaction to me as if with a smile, because I know I'm going to be nice and I'm going to be polite. And I think that's a really good thing for myself. But also, I think it can be a bit dangerous sometimes when you look at that feedback and give it too much power. I know I have been giving the wrong people this type of power over me, or maybe considering their feedback to be more valuable than what it really is, outsourcing my own power. And that's something you have to watch out for. It's really important to have, feedback from people who do want you to win and who do want you to succeed, and who are going to be clapping for you and also calling you out when need be, but not but always question any type of criticism. But in my life, I've been giving the wrong people this right of feedback to me, if that makes sense. And just recently, I've been going through a very, very, very deep transformative therapy. I will share more in a couple of weeks. I cannot wait to share about it. But I've been trying to correct my own habits when it comes to who I'm listening to and whose opinion I think is important in my own life. Yeah, a little sidetrack there. But anyway, then another thing that jumped out at me in this book is about positive thinking. And it's talking about how positive thinking is impossible if you've got this self-concept that's not going to change with it. And I really do believe that's true. I mean, I love affirmations and all of that, but I think sometimes you can listen to affirmations and then you can just think, this is not true. This is never going to be true for me. But it's kind of good to get to a point where it starts to be true for you and you start to see more and more evidence of the things that you want to call in your life. I think as you change, your environment definitely changes. And something else that jumped out at me from this book is this, there's 2 lines here, which is, our self-image prescribes the limits for the accomplishment of any particular goals. It prescribes the area of the possible. So that idea, the area of the possible, has really been, it's planted a seed in my mind about what is the area of the possible. What do I believe is possible for me when it comes to career, love, lifestyle and things like that. And even money, for example. Sometimes we can think of an amount of money we want to get paid for a certain job. If it's on the lower end, it can make us feel exploited, a little bit uncomfortable. Then there's maybe a comfort zone that feels familiar and expected. And then if we can get into the higher echelons of that limit, then you can start to feel appreciated and validated and encouraged and motivated to do more and grow. But then there's a higher limit where it can feel impossible, or I don't deserve this. And I think I actually made a meditation a few episodes back about increasing your financial thermostat. And it's a kind of similar idea about, increasing that thermostat until it gets to a point where you're expecting bigger things. And there is a point where you know what your own thermostat or limit is, and that can be applied to any area of life. And I think it's interesting to try and have it, maybe ask yourself where those limits are in terms of all areas of your life. And what would it feel like to expand those limits a little bit more, the area of possible just becoming a little bit bigger? And I think that's super, super interesting. So that's something I have been thinking about, pondering a lot as well. So that's just chapter 1, and the cogs of my brain are already switched on. And I must confess that I've done a lot of work on myself over the last few years. And I've noticed that as my self-concept changes, so does my environment, and so does my reality, which is really wonderful. And going back to the feedback or reaction from others, I had the most wonderful experience last week when I went to the Aerospain Fair, which is a B2B sex toy fair. And I was able to meet many people that I've influenced, who they know who I am. I have no idea who they are. And people were coming up to me like, Venus, I watched your videos years ago, and now I have a shop of sex toys, or now I'm doing this. And I was like, wow. And sometimes, content creators want big numbers a lot of the time, but and if you see a video that has 10 views, you think, 10 views. But if 10 people come up to you and tell you how much you've impacted them, that's really significant. So I feel really grateful that I've had that reaction or that feedback, because I find it super encouraging and motivating to carry on. Because sometimes when, like as today, I've just been at home all day long making content. I haven't seen a single soul, and I do need that feedback to actually feel like I'm on the right path, to feel guided, which is a beautiful feeling to have, to know that you're doing something that's worthwhile. And I found that super beneficial last week. And also I had lots of messages from followers for my birthday as well, and people who'd remembered from previous years without me having to post that it was my birthday. So it's really nice to have that encouragement. And I would encourage you to encourage others who impact you positively in their lives, because you never know, people do need guidance and feedback, and putting a smile on people's face is always a good thing. So if you are struggling with self-concept, I would highly recommend this book. Many of us are, especially people who are, in the who like personal development, and also anyone who's into manifestation, because this really is the precursor for manifestation. Because at the end of the day, you're only going to receive or manifest the things that you think you are worthy of receiving. So this is like the foundations, the building blocks of bigger dreams, of any dream that you might have in your life. So this is foundational stuff. So that is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Now it's time for this episode's meditation. Please don't listen to this while driving or operating machinery. Instead, take a break from whatever you're doing, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and enjoy. I celebrate the natural beauty of my hair. I enjoy caring for my hair as a form of self-love. I nourish my hair with care and consistency. My hair grows strong, full, and healthy. My scalp feels balanced, clean, and supported. I choose habits that support long-term hair vitality. My hair is getting better every day. I celebrate the natural beauty of my hair. I enjoy caring for my hair as a form of self-love. My hair reflects strength and natural beauty. I treat my hair with patience and respect. I give my body what it needs for optimal hair health. My hair feels soft, strong, and resilient. My hair is getting better every day. I celebrate the natural beauty of my hair. I enjoy caring for my hair as a form of self-love. My hair shines with natural radiance. My roots are strong and well nourished. My hair grows with ease and vitality. I support healthy circulation in my scalp. My hair is getting better every day. I celebrate the natural beauty of my hair. I enjoy caring for my hair as a form of self-love. I allow my hair to thrive in its natural state. My body supports healthy hair from within. My hair feels alive, vibrant, and full of energy. I trust my body's ability to restore and renew my hair. My hair is getting better every day. I celebrate the natural beauty of my hair. I enjoy caring for my hair as a form of self-love. I choose foods that support strong hair growth. My hair responds positively to gentle care. My scalp is a healthy foundation for growth. I protect my hair with mindful daily choices. My hair is getting better every day. I celebrate the natural beauty of my hair. I enjoy caring for my hair as a form of self-love. My hair strength improves every day. I am consistent in my hair care routine. I love my hair and I take good care of it. My hair feels nourished and deeply cared for. My hair is getting better every day. Do you feel disconnected from your body or unsure how to ask for what you really want in bed? Or maybe you're stuck in a routine, or you know there's more pleasure available to you, but you don't know how to access it or where to begin. That's exactly why I created the Personal Pleasure Coaching app. It's a 12-week guided journey designed to help you reconnect with your body, release shame, and explore your pleasure in a deeper, more conscious way. Inside, you'll find daily micro lessons, guided practices, embodied exercises, and intimacy meditations that you won't find anywhere else. Whether you're single, in a relationship, or somewhere in between, this is about building confidence, connection, and real lived pleasure. If you're ready to prioritize yourself and your pleasure and explore what's truly possible for you, you can get started now at studio.com/Venus. That's studio.com/Venus. Your pleasure is worth it. To find out more about me and my orgasmic lifestyle, visit venusohara.org or follow me on Instagram. The Orgasmic Lifestyle is also on Substack and YouTube, where you can watch all the interviews with our experts. All the links are in the show notes below. Make sure to search for the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast by Venus O'Hara in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening, have an orgasmic week, and make sure every day is a climax.